everyone, this is the I Never book tag. I think that's what it's called, but I'm gonna link the original video down below, so let's get right to it. Question number 1 is, I never read that. Name a book that you've never read that everyone else has. I think there's a lot of books that I haven't read that other people have read. I think the biggest chunk of books that I haven't touched is any book by Cassandra Clare, which I know she has like 2 different series, like I can't even remember what they're called, but you know which ones I'm talking about, that I haven't picked up and read, and I think that I've seen pretty much every other person talk about those before, and those are the books that I know I haven't tried to read, but most people have before. Question number 2 is, I never read anything so awesome. Name your favorite book. You guys know what books I like. I'm gonna have to say Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, or You by Caroline Kepnes. Thrillers, things like that I just absolutely love, and these 2 books are just incredibly addicting, and these authors are great and their books are really awesome, so if you haven't read those, make sure you do it. Question number 3. I never thought I would get through it. Name a book that you didn't like but powered through it anyways. I think there's a few books that I could put into this category, but right off the top of my head I'm gonna have to go with Sweet Bitter, which I've vaguely reviewed before, and same with The Nest, which is actually on my October reading wrap-up. Both those books I gave 2 stars. They were not very interesting, the characters were not relatable at all, and I just didn't really know what the purpose of the book was. There was no big thing happening in it, so those 2 books were just a real struggle. Question number 4 is, I will never finish that. Name a book or series that you don't plan on finishing. There's actually quite a few series that I've started when I was first on BookTube, which was, I don't know, almost a year ago, where I saw a lot of people reading them, and I haven't read any series in like a long time, so I thought, okay, I'll give all these books a try. And it turned out that I'm just not a huge fan of series, I guess. And I think a lot of those were also YA books, and fantasy YA books. So, I don't know, I guess fantasy is just not my thing. I don't know, but anyways, so the ones I started is A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I liked the first book. I just read it like a year ago that I can't remember what even happened to pick up the second book in the series. Then The Wrath and the Dawn, I didn't like the first book, and I won't be reading the second book. I think it might be just 2 books, but I'm still not going to do it. Then the Throne of Glass series, those were interesting, and actually the novella that comes before all that was also pretty good, but I don't know, there's just too many other books, like standalone books, that I want to read, so I don't think I will read that. And the final one is Shatter Me, which I read the first book and it was just atrocious, so there's no way I would read any of the other ones. So that's that. Those are the book series that I will not finish. Question number 5 is, I will never regret reading that. Name a book you read solely on a recommendation that you ended up really liking. This will have to be the opposite of Loneliness. I read this book a few months back, but it was a really interesting book. And all the stories in it I felt like I could relate to, and I felt like the author was just someone that I could be friends with and just have those same sorts of experiences, which sometimes doesn't really happen. Like, you read some books and they're written by like a celebrity or something, and while some of the stories are relatable, they're not entirely relatable, just because their experiences are a lot different than those of a regular person. But with this book, I felt like the experiences that she had were very easy to sort of picture myself in those situations. So I really enjoyed that book, and if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. Question number 6, I would never do that. Name a relatable book character who made choices you didn't agree with, or things you would never do. I don't know, I'd have to go with Girls. The Girls, just because the girl who's the main character in this book ended up sort of like becoming part of the cult, and I mean, I don't know, I'm just not the kind of person who would hang around a shady group of people, I guess. Like, if there's something weird about them, I would not be very like mesmerized by what they were into. I would probably just leave them alone and not have any part in whatever they have going on there. But she like really stuck around, and I mean, in spite of some sketchy activities going on, didn't make her want to leave and not have anything to do with those people. So I don't know, I feel like that's one thing that I'd probably stay away from. Question number 7. I never wanted to admit it. Name a book that you were embarrassed to say you read or were embarrassed to carry around with you. I would have to say 50 Shades of Grey, just because it was so poorly written. Like, I have nothing against the subject matter, and if it was a well-written book, I probably would be enjoying it a lot more, but I didn't like the characters. Like, it was, like I said, poorly written. It was just very cheesy and not something that I could get on board with. So just because of that, I would just be ashamed to say that I had read it. But I had to know what all the fuss was about, and I mean, I had low expectations, and I was right. So there you have it. Question number 8. I never read anything so heartwarming. Name a book or a series that really touched your heart. And I would have to go with Wonder, which is an awesome, awesome book. It's just such a sweet book. It's a very quick read, but I think that everyone should read it. It's about just accepting people who are different from us and just everyone getting along and just being happy for everybody. So, such a great book, and if you haven't read it before, it's a really good read. Question number 9 is, I never laughed so hard. Name a book that made you laugh out loud. I'll have to say that The Catcher in the Rye was a pretty funny book, and I was chuckling on like a crowded subway to myself, so I think that's a reasonable book to recommend for that. Another one is You'll Grow Out of It, and that is also a pretty funny book and definitely has some great short stories in it, so if you like short stories, I recommend it. Finally, question number 10 is, I never could have made it through childhood without it. Name a favorite book or book series. I would have to say that when I first started reading books and really got into reading, it was before Harry Potter. So the book that I was really into was The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, which is kind of an interesting choice, but I was just so mesmerized by this kid who was just up to all these things, so I would have to say that. And then obviously like the Huckleberry Finn I read after that, and I liked it as well, so those books were the ones who sort of really got me interested into reading mostly adventure books. Then I sort of ventured out into other genres as well. So that's it for this book tag. Please let me know if you've read any of the books that I've talked about, and also please let me know what you're reading right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.